Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. This is the Astroherbalism Apothecary, where we dive deep into a different plant every week and examine how it works through all five bodies. Today, we're diving deep into Tulsi, holy basil, and honestly, the timing couldn't be more perfect. With everything happening in the world right now, with Mercury and Venus both moving into Pisces this week, and with all that collective emotional overwhelm we're feeling, Tulsi is exactly the medicine that we need to talk about. This is a plant that has been revered for thousands of years in Hindu culture as sacred, as divine feminine energy, as a household guardian. And at the same time, it is one of our most scientifically validated adaptogens. It's that beautiful bridge between ancient wisdom and modern understanding. In Sanskrit, Tulsi is called Tulasi, which translates as that which is incomparable. And after working with this plant for 30 years, I can tell you that the name fits. This is powerful medicine for times when we feel stuck, shut down, frozen by trauma or overwhelm, or when we're simultaneously exhausted and wired and can't seem to find our way back to ourselves. So let's explore Tulsi through the five bodies framework and how it works physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. And more importantly, how to know if this is your medicine right now. So Tulsi's scientific name is Oxymum tenuiflorum, sometimes called Oxymum sanctum. And it's a member of the Lamiaceae family. This is the mint family. If you've ever grown basil in your garden, you will recognize the family resemblance immediately. There are three main varieties that you will encounter. The first one is Rama Tulsi. It has green leaves and a milder, sweeter flavor. This is often what you're going to find in commercial tea blends. Now, Krishna Tulsi has these gorgeous dark purple leaves and a much stronger, much more pungent taste. Now, the purple coloring tells us that there are powerful anthocyanins present. Those are the compounds that support cardiovascular health and have incredibly strong antioxidant properties. Now, Vanna Tulsi is the wild variety, and it tends to be the most aromatic and medicinally potent. Now, in tropical climates, Tulsi will grow as a perennial shrub, reaching about 3 feet tall. Here in temperate zones like Arizona, we grow it as an annual. It's got those characteristic square stems that all mints have. And this is part of the doctrine of signatures, telling us about the structural support for the nervous system. Now, the leaves are opposite and aromatic when you crush them. And in midsummer, it produces these beautiful, small flowers that are white to purple color. And they are produced in tight racemes that the bees absolutely adore. And here's something that I love about the doctrine of signatures. Those tight flower clusters blooming at the peak of summer represent the gathering and focusing of dispersed energy, which is exactly what this plant does for scattered mental states. The plant is showing us its medicine. And the beautiful thing about Tulsi is how easy it is to grow. And honestly, growing your own is the best way to work with this plant. Now, Tulsi loves warmth and sun. Give it full sun, well-drained soil. You can start the seeds indoors about 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost, or you can buy seedlings from a nursery in the spring. It is not a frost hardy plant at all. So you want to wait until the soil is consistently warm before transplanting it outside. Here in Arizona and in other hot climates, Tulsi thrives through the summer. In cooler zones, you can grow it as an annual or you can bring it indoors in a pot before first frost. It makes a wonderful potted plant for a sunny windowsill. You want to water it regularly, but don't let it sit in soggy soil. Tulsi doesn't like to have wet feet. Pinch back the growing tips regularly. This will encourage the plant to become bushier and it delays the flowering. The more you harvest, the more it produces. Now, for leaf tea and for tinctures, you want to harvest the plant before it flowers. That's when the volatile oils are going to be the most concentrated in the leaves. Once it starts flowering, the energy goes more into reproduction and the quality of the medicine in the leaf diminishes slightly. However, if you want to use the flowering tops for medicine, you want to harvest when the flowers are just beginning to open. If you do it at this time, both the leaves and the flowers will have the medicinal value. And you want to harvest it in the morning after the dew is dried, but before the heat of the day. That's when the volatile oils are going to be at their peak. If you gather them in small bundles and hang them upside down in a warm, dry, dark place with good air circulation, or use a dehydrator at a low temperature, you want to keep it 95 to 105 to preserve the volatile oils. Once it's completely dry and crispy, you want to strip the leaves from the stems and store them in airtight glass jars away from light and heat. Properly dried and stored Tulsi will maintain its potency for about a year. Now, you might be asking, why don't we forage this plant? Here in the States, Tulsi is a cultivated plant. There is no wild version of Tulsi in North America. You won't find it growing wild to forage it. And this is actually good news because it means that you can grow a steady supply at home or you can purchase it from a reliable source without impacting the wild populations. Now, if you aren't growing your own, please make sure that you are sourcing organic dried Tulsi from reputable herb companies. If you need to know where you can get that, just leave me a comment and I will gladly let you know where I get some. And you want to make sure that it is actually Oxymum tenuiflorum or Oxymum sanctum, not just regular basil labeled as holy basil for marketing. The color, the aroma, and the taste should be vibrant. If it smells like old hay, it's either too old or it was poorly stored. So before we dive into how Tulsi works in all 5 bodies, we need to understand its energetic profile. This is the key that unlocks everything else. So starting with taste, Tulsi has a very complex taste. It is astringent, bitter, pungent, and sweet. That's not common. Most herbs have maybe 2 or 3 taste qualities, but Tulsi has all 4. The pungent and the bitter qualities are warming and moving. They break through stagnation. The astringent quality provides focus and tonification. And then the sweet note nourishes and prevents the herb from being too dispersing or too drying. This combination is brilliant for exactly what Tulsi does. Now, as far as temperature goes, Tulsi is warming, and this is critical. This is a heating herb, which immediately will tell you who needs it and who doesn't. If you're cold hands and feet, sluggish digestion, always reaching for a sweater, Tulsi's warmth is going to feel amazing. If you already run hot, you've got acid reflux, inflammation, a tendency to overheat, Tulsi may aggravate you. So when we're talking about tissue states, the primary tissue state that Tulsi addresses is stagnation. Things that are stuck, not moving, whether it's congested respiratory passages, stagnant depression that just won't lift, stuck digestive energy, or frozen emotional states. The pungent bitter profile breaks the stuck pattern and its dual action. Here's what makes Tulsi so special as an adaptogen is it works in two phases. Initially, it's stimulating. It moves stuck energy. It breaks through the stagnation. And then it becomes calming. It restores resilience. It allows the nervous system to rest. And this is perfect for people who are simultaneously exhausted and wired, running on fumes, but you still can't sleep. So, from an Ayurvedic perspective, Tulsi balances kapha constitution. People who tend toward cold, dampness, congestion, sluggishness, and heaviness. It can also support vata when coldness is a part of that picture, though that dual action is particularly useful for vata types who need both energy and grounding. However, and this is important, if you're pitta dominant, if you already run hot and tend towards inflammation, Tulsi, if it's used in excess, can aggravate you. Now, you can work with this by combining Tulsi with cooling herbs, but straight Tulsi alone may create too much heat. This energetic framework, the warming, anti-stagnation, dual phase action, explains everything Tulsi does across all 5 bodies. Let's talk about how Tulsi works in the physical body. And I'm going to organize this for you by body system. The immune system. This is major. Tulsi is one of the most well-researched immunomodulators we have. And that word is important. Immunomodulator. It's not just an immune stimulant. It doesn't rev up your immune system. It helps to balance and regulate it. The research shows significant increases in interferon gamma, interleukin 4, T helper cells, and natural killer cells. This is your immune system getting smarter, more responsive, and more balanced. Because Tulsi is warming and it moves stagnation, it specifically addresses sluggish immunity and recurrent low-grade infections. You know that pattern where someone just can't fully shake something. They get a cold and it seems to clear. 2 weeks later, they're sick again. And it's this cycle of never quite recovering. That is stagnant immunity. And Tulsi's warming and moving quality addresses this so beautifully. In traditional use, Tulsi has been used for millennia in India for infection prevention and general immune toning. In Chinese medicine, it's used for colds, skin infections, and parasites. Now, in the respiratory system, Tulsi is warming and those pungent volatile oils break through stagnation. It excels at cold, damp respiratory congestion. Think thick mucus, chest congestion, that feeling of heaviness in the lungs that you just can't get to move. The antiviral and antibacterial properties fight the infection itself, while the decongestant and diaphoretic actions move stuck mucus and stimulate circulation to help break the fever. It's also traditionally used for asthma and allergies when taken as a long-term tonic. That warming, clearing action works so phenomenally on stuck congestion. Next would be stress response and adaptation. And here's where Tulsi really shines in our modern world. That dual action I mentioned, initially stimulating and then calming, makes Tulsi exceptional for chronic stress, where someone is simultaneously exhausted and wired. This is a true adaptogen. It helps your body adapt to stressors without depleting you any further. The warming energy moves stuck stress patterns. It breaks you out of that frozen overwhelm. The nervine quality calms an overstimulated nervous system. I use Tulsi specifically for what I call stagnant situational depression. When someone is stuck in a depressive state from a specific trauma or from circumstances and can't move forward, there's energy underneath the depression, but it's frozen, stuck, inaccessible. Tulsi warms and mobilizes that stuck energy. And then the digestive system. The warming, pungent, carminative action addresses cold, stagnant digestion. Tulsi will stimulate appetite and digestion, moves stagnant food, and eases flatulence, indigestion, gastric distress, and even vomiting. If you have that pattern of poor appetite, food that just feels like it's sitting in your stomach, bloating, gas, especially if you feel better with warm food and worse with cold raw foods, Tulsi's warming digestive support can be absolutely transformed. Blood sugar regulation. So, research has demonstrated that Tulsi's ability to regulate blood sugar in diabetics. This is clinically relevant, but if you are on diabetic medications, you do need to make sure you're working with your healthcare provider and monitor carefully because Tulsi can lower your blood sugar even further. And cancer support. Preclinical studies have shown Tulsi preventing chemical induced skin, liver, oral, and lung cancers through multiple different mechanisms. It increases antioxidant activity. It alters gene expression. It induces cancer cell death, and it inhibits tumor growth and spread. The radioprotective properties make Tulsi valuable during and after chemotherapy and radiation therapy. It helps protect healthy cells from radiation-induced damage. The radioprotective phytochemicals include flavonoids, eugenol, rosmarinic acid, abgenin, and carnosic acid. Now let's talk about Tulsi in the mental body and how it works on mental patterns, thought structures, and cognitive function. So, because Tulsi is warming and breaks through stagnation, mentally, this shows up as the ability to break through rigid, stuck thought patterns. You know that state where your mind just keeps going over the same territory, circular thinking, rumination, obsessive thought loops. That is mental stagnation. And Tulsi's pungent, warming nature cuts right through it. The astringent and the bitter qualities provide focus and clarity, while the sweet note prevents you from getting overstimulated. That dual action helps with scattered thinking that can't focus and with obsessive thinking that can't let go. It brings mental flexibility, ADD and ADHD support. So Tulsi is specifically indicated for ADD and ADHD with the inability to focus. And this makes complete sense energetically. That nervous system support combined with warming stimulation that clears mental fog, followed by a calming phase that allows sustained concentration. Now, it's not going to work the same way that pharmaceutical stimulants do. But for constitutional patterns of cold, stagnant mental fog with the inability to concentrate, Tulsi can be remarkably helpful. Now, depression and mental patterns. So here's where that stagnant situational depression language becomes really important. Not all depression is the same constitutionally. Tulsi specifically helps when someone is stuck in a depressive mental state following specific trauma or a specific circumstance, and they can't move out of it. There's this quality of being mentally trapped, like being in a room with no windows and no door. The warming, moving energy of Tulsi helps break the stuck pattern and kind of creates an opening and a way forward. And then the adaptogenic quality builds resilience so that the person doesn't just crash back into the same pattern. Tulsi is primarily ruled by Jupiter with a secondary Mercury influence. Jupiter brings expansion, wisdom, and the adaptogenic quality that builds mental resilience over time. When your mind feels small, constricted, trapped in limited thinking, that's where Jupiter's expansive signature shows up. Jupiter is the planet of optimism, higher learning, the broader perspective. It helps us see beyond immediate circumstances to be able to see larger patterns and possibilities. When you're stuck in mental loops or you can't see a way forward, Jupiter opens up the view. Mercury then provides the second influence, the intelligence to communicate and create from a place of purity and wisdom. That ability to move between mental states, from depression to engagement, from scattered to focused, from rigid to flexible, that adaptability, that mental dexterity, the Jupiter fire mutable signature gives Tulsi its uplifting, stimulating quality on mental patterns. It doesn't just calm an agitated mind, it expands it. It opens it to new possibilities, helps you think bigger and freer. And then the heart opening quality also affects the mental patterns. Jupiter opens us up to gratitude, abundance thinking, faith, and that things can improve. Instead of being mentally closed off in scarcity, fear, or hopelessness, Jupiter invites expansive, optimistic thinking grounded in wisdom. Next would be shifting belief systems. So Tulsi shifts belief systems rooted in I can't, or I'm stuck, or nothing will ever change. That warming, moving action on a mental level challenges these rigid beliefs, creates space for new perspectives. The adaptogenic quality builds belief in your own resilience. I can handle what life brings. I can adapt. I'm not as fragile as I thought I was. Now, in the emotional body, this is where Tulsi's heart opening medicine becomes incredibly apparent. It is amazing for frozen emotional states. Emotionally, that warming, stagnation breaking quality addresses frozen emotional states. People who have shut down emotionally after trauma, who can't access their feelings, who feel disconnected from their hearts. After trauma, many people freeze emotionally as a survival mechanism. The feelings are too big, they're too overwhelming, and they feel too dangerous. So we just shut down. We disconnect, we go numb. And that works for a little while. But eventually, that frozen state becomes its own prison. Tulsi gently warms and opens the heart center, allowing feelings to move again without being completely overwhelming. That warming quality provides safety for this process. It's like thawing frozen ground. You can't just break up frozen earth. You need to warm it. You need to soften it first. Heart opening after trauma. Tulsi is specifically useful for those disconnected from emotions or from others. And this is profound work. The plant helps us risk feeling again, to risk connection again after we've been hurt. Think about it. If you've been burned by trusting someone, by opening your heart, by being vulnerable, of course you're going to close off. Of course you're going to want to protect yourself. The question is how long do you want to live in that protected but isolated state? Tulsi doesn't force anything. It doesn't rip open a defended heart. It warms, it softens, it invites, it says, you can feel this, you can handle this. You're stronger than you know. Now, Tulsi also helps with building emotional resilience. So, the adaptogenic quality on an emotional level builds resilience for the long term healing journey. This is not about quick fixes. This is about developing emotional capacity to stay present with difficult feelings, to weather the emotional storms, to not shut down when things get hard. That dual action mirrors the emotional healing process. First, we need the energy to face what it is that we've been avoiding, and then we need calm so that we can integrate and rest. And Tulsi supports both phases. Now, on shadow work and planetary lessons, Jupiter teaches us about expansion and abundance and our right to take up space in the world. Shadow work with Tulsi involves examining where we've made ourselves small, where we've limited our own growth, where we played it safe instead of expanding into our full potential. Maybe you learned early that wanting more, being too ambitious, or taking up too much space was either selfish or dangerous. So you learn to shrink, to settle, to make yourself smaller than you are. Tulsi's warming, expanding quality brings these limiting patterns into the consciousness so they can be transformed. Jupiter also teaches optimism and faith, the belief that things can get better, that growth is possible, that you're worthy of abundance. Tulsi helps shift the shadow belief that you don't deserve good things or that hoping is dangerous. Mercury's lesson involves honest communication and mental flexibility. Emotionally, this means being able to name our feelings, to communicate our needs, and adapt our emotional responses rather than staying stuck in the same old patterns. Mercury gives us the words to speak our truth from a place of wisdom and purity. Grief, isolation, and gratitude. Tulsi is specifically helpful for opening the heart to gratitude and connection after trauma and isolation. Whether that isolation was chosen after trauma or imposed by circumstance. Grief, loss, pandemic isolation, chronic illness, keeping you separate from others. Tulsi helps thaw that frozen state and allows the heart to risk connection again. The sweet taste quality is important here. It provides nourishment and comfort, making the opening process gentler and safer. Now let's talk about what Tulsi does on an energetic level. your aura, your subtle body, your chakras, your energy field, and your boundaries. Tulsi warms the energetic field. Just like Tulsi warms the physical body, it's going to warm the energetic body. People who need Tulsi often have what I call a cold aura. Their energetic field feels contracted or dim, like it's pulled tight around them like a blanket. It's like their lights have been turned down to conserve energy. This is completely normal after trauma, after prolonged stress, after situations where we've had to make ourselves small to survive. The energetic field will contract as protection. And then it stays contracted even after the dangers pass. Tulsi's warming quality will gently expand that contracted field. It's like turning up the thermostat in a cold room. Things start to loosen, to flow again. The aura will brighten and expand. It becomes more vibrant. Now, the pungent, moving quality of Tulsi breaks up stuck energy in the field. You know how energy can get congested in certain areas? It's heavy in the chest or stuck in the throat or dense around the solar plexus. Tulsi moves that stagnation. It is particularly effective for stuck energy around the heart chakra, that armoring that we build to protect ourselves from being hurt. Tulsi doesn't rip that armor off. It warms it up until it softens, and we can choose to then remove it ourselves. Tulsi will also strengthen your energetic boundaries. So, here's something that I've always found interesting. Even though Tulsi is a heart opening and warming herb, it actually strengthens your energetic boundaries. How? By increasing vitality. When your life force is strong, your field is strong. You're not leaking energy. You're not as porous to others' emotions and energy. People with weak, cold, depleted fields tend to absorb everything around them, other people's emotions, other people's moods, the energy of spaces, collective anxiety. Tulsi builds the strength of your field so you can stay open-hearted without being energetically overwhelmed. Now, it does have some chakra correspondences. Tulsi primarily works with the heart chakra, anahata, opening, warming, clearing stuck grief and old heartbreak. That Jupiter correspondence shows up here strongly. Jupiter's expansive quality helps the heart open beyond its contracted, protected state. But it also affects the solar plexus chakra, Manipura, restoring personal power and confidence and the ability to take action. Jupiter governs expansion and growth, helping us reclaim our right to take up space and claim our power. When these two chakras are both open and strong, you can be both powerful and loving, both strong and soft. The throat chakra, Vishuddha, benefits from Tulsi's Mercury correspondence. Finding your voice again, speaking your truth, communicating authentically and wisely after having been silenced or shut down. Mercury helps us speak from a place of purity and wisdom rather than from reactivity. Now, in terms of auric layers, Tulsi particularly affects the emotional body, clearing stuck emotional patterns, thawing frozen feelings, allowing emotional flow without overwhelm. It also strongly affects the mental body, which is breaking up rigid thought structures, bringing flexibility and adaptability to your mental patterns. And the etheric or energetic body, that layer closest to the physical, strengthening the boundary between your physical body and the environment, reducing porousness. Now, Tulsi is incredibly good for working with entities and attachments. Tulsi's warming and purifying quality can help clear low vibrational energetic attachments. This is not a forceful banishing way, but by raising your vibration and strengthening your field so that these attachments naturally fall away. They're not able to hold on when your vitality is strong. And this is why in traditional use in Hindu homes, as it's used as a household guardian, it makes complete sense from an energetic perspective. Tulsi doesn't create a hard protective shell. Instead, it protects by radiating vitality, warmth, and light. Negative energies have a harder time penetrating a field that is vibrant and strong. Now, it will also help you ground the spiritual. That dual action of stimulating and then calming helps ground spiritual experiences into the body. People who are very spiritual but ungrounded, who live in their heads or in the etheric realms but struggle with physical embodiment, benefit from Tulsi's ability to bring spiritual energy down into a physical form. And so that's going to bring us into the spiritual body discussion. I want to talk a little bit about sacred status and cultural respect. So, in the Hindu tradition, Tulsi is sacred to the god Vishnu and regarded as a manifestation of the goddess Vrindavani or Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and the consort of Vishnu. In Sanskrit, Tulsi has approximately 40 names, including Kanchani, meaning golden goddess, all alluding to sacred ceremonies and offerings. It is commonly grown in special pots in the courtyards of Hindu homes as a household guardian and as a spiritual presence. The plant is said to emanate the energy of the divine feminine and helps grant prosperity, not just material wealth, but the prosperity of an open heart, of connection, of spiritual vitality. In the Hindu designation of holy, it reflects Tulsi's sacred place in Hindu culture for millennia. Its use is revered as a spiritual symbol, as a ritual offering. This does not mean that Tulsi is pharmacologically superior to common basil. In fact, there's very little difference in the herbal effects between holy basil and common basil. The holiness reflects cultural and religious significance, similar to how cows are sacred in India. This is important for us to understand as Western herbalists. We honor Tulsi's cultural significance without creating plant hierarchy or exotic mystique that places it above our own Western sacred plants. Respect doesn't require exoticism. Now, let's get to the soul lessons of Tulsi. The warming, heart opening quality teaches the soul lesson of returning to vitality after shutdown. Many of us, after trauma or prolonged stress, we lose touch with our own life force, with our passion, with our authentic self expression. We go into survival mode and forget how to truly live. Tulsi teaches the courage to warm back up, to risk feeling again, to open the heart after it's been closed for protection. This is vulnerability as a strength. Jupiter's correspondence brings lessons about how expansion and growth and claiming your right to abundance and your space in the world, not shrinking, not making yourself smaller to make others more comfortable, but expanding fully into your potential, even when that feels vulnerable and scary and crunchy. Jupiter teaches us that we're worthy of taking up space, of growing, of wanting more. And then Mercury's lesson involves the adaptability and the intelligence in response to life's challenges. The soul learns that resilience doesn't mean that you're unaffected. It means developing the flexibility to bend without breaking, to respond wisely rather than react rigidly. Mercury gives us the mental dexterity to navigate change with wisdom and grace. Now, on a soul level, Tulsi also addresses karmic patterns of closing off, protecting ourselves so thoroughly that we can't receive love or connection, cutting ourselves off from our life force to avoid pain. So many of us learned early that being open, being vulnerable was dangerous, that revealing our true selves led to rejection or punishment or shame. So we've learned to hide, to armor up, to stay safe by staying small. Tulsi teaches that opening to life with all its joy and all its pain is the path forward. It's not shut down. That the risk of being hurt again is worth taking because of the possibility of real connection, real love, real aliveness. If you work with Tulsi on Jupiter days, which are Thursdays, or during Jupiter hours for vitality, life force, heart opening, and authentic expression. Now, if you're trying to engage the Mercury side of Tulsi, you would use Mercury days, which is Wednesday, or Mercury hours. This is for mental clarity and adaptability and communication and nervous system balance. You want to begin a Tulsi protocol on a new moon to break through old patterns and initiate change. So now let's talk about clinical assessment. Before we dive into the protocols, let's talk about matching the herb to the person, because that is what herbalism does. If you have a cold, stagnant constitution, we're talking pale or gray complexion, pale tongue with white coating, deep, slow, or wiry pulse. If you're always cold, especially in your hands and feet, low energy, but you can't relax, you're wired and tired simultaneously. If you get recurrent infections that won't fully resolve, if you have a heavy, stuck depression that won't shift, mental fog, you can't focus, sluggish digestion, poor appetite, undigested food, or if you're stuck under stress, running on fumes with no recovery time in between stressors, if you can't seem to bounce back, you can't seem to rest despite being exhausted, if you have a kapha imbalance, heaviness, congestion, excess mucus, cold vata, anxiety, scattered mind with a stuck quality, if you crave warming foods and you feel better with them, all of those things are going to give you an indication that Tulsi might be wonderfully beneficial for you. Now, if you have a heat or pitta constitution, a red tongue, especially at the tip, rapid bounding pulse, if you run hot, have inflammation, acid reflux, burning digestion, irritability, anger, frustration as a baseline, red complexion, skin rashes, night sweats, bloodshot eyes. It's probably not for you. Tulsi is for cold, stuck, stagnant people who need warming and movement. It is not for hot, inflamed, or overstimulated people. It will make things worse. So, that said, if someone needs Tulsi's adaptogenic and nervine support, but is running warm, you can combine it with cooling nervines like milky oats or skullcap to help balance out that warming quality. If someone needs the immune support but has those heat signs, consider other immunomodulators like medicinal mushrooms instead. If stagnation is present, but it's present with significant vata anxiety, pair Tulsi with calming, grounding adaptogens like ashwagandha. Let me paint you a comprehensive picture across all 5 bodies. This is your Tulsi person. Physically, they're dealing with recurrent infections that they can't fully shake, sluggish immunity, cold congestion, stuck digestion, or chronic stress that's depleting them. They run cold, feel heavy or stagnant, lack vitality. They're always reaching for a sweater. Their hands and feet are cold, and they feel like they're moving through molasses. Mentally, they're stuck in circular thinking or mental fog, can't focus, can't stop obsessing, caught in rigid belief patterns or scattered thinking that just won't settle. They feel mentally trapped in a state that they can't shift, like you're in a maze with no exit. Emotionally, they're shut down after trauma, disconnected from their heart, isolated, even when they're in relationships, unable to access or process their own feelings. There's a frozen quality, a heaviness, a stuck depressive state that nothing seems to touch. Energetically, they have a contracted, dim aura with cold, stagnant energy, particularly around the heart and solar plexus. Their field feels porous and weak. Clear, cold stagnation signs, pale tongue with white coating, a deeper, wiry pulse, cold extremities, sluggish everything. And then spiritually, they've dimmed their light. They've closed off their heart. They've lost touch with their own vitality and their own authentic self expression. They're in a pattern of protection through shutdown that's no longer serving them, but they also don't know how to break out of it. These are the people that need Tulsi. So, when we make medicine, when we harvest, we use the leaves and the flowering tops. Now, you can make a tincture. You can use a 1:5 ratio for dried or a 1:2 ratio for fresh. I love Tulsi tea. A teaspoon of dried leaf in a cup of water, steep it for 10 minutes. You can drink this 3 to 4 times a day. The fresh leaves work amazing too if you're growing it. Now, the traditional Indian preparation will often include black pepper for the synergistic effects. The piperine in black pepper will enhance the absorption and the effectiveness. Now, you can also prepare Tulsi as an infused oil for topical use. You can infuse it into vinegars. You can make an oximal, a poultice, or even in food as a culinary herb. So let me kind of give you an idea of what a sample protocol would look like. So as a foundation, you would start with Tulsi tincture, 40 to 60 drops 3 times a day, or a teaspoon of dried herb per cup, 3 to 4 cups daily. And you generally want to take this with meals that include black pepper. Now, you will continue this for a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks for a full adaptogenic benefit. Now, for additional support, you could combine it with ashwagandha if significant anxiety accompanies the stagnation. You could combine it with rhodiola if there is physical and mental exhaustion that is severe. I really like that combination. Tulsi and rhodiola are amazing together. As far as lifestyle goes, you want to emphasize warming, well-spiced foods in your diet. You want to avoid cold, raw, heavy foods that are going to increase the stagnation. I recommend always including black pepper, ginger, and garlic in your regular cooking with this herb. Also, movement practices, things like walking, yoga, dance, anything that's going to break that physical stagnation. And then, as a spiritual practice, a daily gratitude practice with morning Tulsi tea or a heart opening meditation, 10 to 15 minutes daily, or journaling to move stuck emotions and thoughts. Now, for acute respiratory issues, you will most likely see improvement in about 3 to 5 days. If you're taking it for stress response and adaptation, minimum 4 to 6 weeks to really build resilience, but you're going to get optimal results in 8 to 12 weeks. And then for depression and other emotional patterns, you should start seeing a significant shift in about 6 to 12 weeks with gradual improvement throughout. Now, long-term use is generally safe at therapeutic levels, so it can be taken for several months and then reassess. I highly recommend taking breaks periodically. That way you can actually evaluate if it's working. So now let's talk about safety, interactions, and contraindications, because this is critical. Tulsi is generally very safe at therapeutic doses, but there are some very important contraindications and interactions that you should know about. So these are the absolute no's. Pregnancy and trying to conceive. This is non-negotiable. Tulsi is absolutely contraindicated in pregnancy or for anyone trying to conceive. Animal studies have shown potential anti-fertility effects and possible embryo toxicity. If you are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, do not use Tulsi, period. As far as breastfeeding goes, we don't have enough safety data for breastfeeding, so always exercise caution. Consult with your healthcare provider or lactation specialist before using Tulsi if you are nursing. Now, let's talk about the medication interactions. So, blood thinners. Tulsi does have a mild blood thinning property. If you're on anticoagulant medications like warfarin, Coumadin, aspirin, or other blood thinners, you need to seek medical supervision before using Tulsi. It could potentially increase your bleeding risk or affect the dosing of your medication. Tulsi lowers your blood sugar. If you're on diabetic medications, insulin, metformin, sulfonylureas, or any other blood sugar lowering drugs, you need to monitor your blood sugar carefully and work with your doctor. Tulsi could cause your blood sugar to drop too low, especially if your medication dose hasn't been adjusted. Also, preliminary research does suggest that Tulsi may speed up the elimination of some medications through the liver, potentially making them less effective. If you're on any prescription medication, please discuss Tulsi use with your prescriber. This is especially important for medications with very narrow therapeutic windows. And remember, dosing matters. These safety concerns apply to therapeutic doses. Having Tulsi occasionally in a tea blend is very different than taking a concentrated tincture 3 times daily for months. But if you're using it medicinally, these precautions apply. Also, quality matters. Use organic, properly sourced Tulsi. Contaminated or adulterated herbs proliferate the market and can cause problems that have nothing to do with the herb itself. So make sure that what you're getting is actually organic and for medicinal use. Also, duration matters. Tulsi can be used for several months as an adaptogen, but I recommend periodic breaks to reassess whether you still need it and to prevent any potential sensitization. So, this does come with this caveat. Stop using Tulsi and consult a healthcare provider if you experience unusual bleeding or bruising, darkness, dizziness, shakiness, or signs of low blood sugar, skin rashes or allergic reactions, worsening of your heat symptoms like acid reflux, inflammation, irritability, any unexpected or concerning symptom. If you're under medical care, tell your doctor and your pharmacist that you are using Tulsi. Bring the bottle or package so that they can see exactly what you're taking. This isn't being paranoid. This is just being responsible. Most healthcare providers appreciate being informed, and it helps them provide better care. If they're not familiar with Tulsi, you can direct them to the research on immunomodulation, blood sugar effects, and potential medication interaction. Using herbs responsibly means knowing not just what they do, but when not to use them and how they might interact with other treatments. This knowledge protects you, and it helps herbs maintain their rightful place as legitimate medicine rather than being dismissed as just supplements. Your safety is the priority. If you are ever in doubt, please consult with a qualified clinical herbalist or healthcare provider who understands both herbal medicine and conventional treatment. Tulsi teaches us that warming back up after shutdown isn't weakness, it's courage. That opening the heart after trauma isn't foolishness, it's wisdom. That adapting to life's stressors with resilience and flexibility is a skill that we can develop, not just something we either have or don't have. This is a plant that honors the intelligence of both traditional sacred use and modern scientific validation. Whether you call it Tulsi or holy basil, whether you work with it as medicine or as a spiritual practice, the lesson is the same. Move through what's stuck, warm what's frozen, open what's closed, and trust your own resilience. The warmth you're seeking is not outside of you. It's been there all along, waiting for the right conditions to thaw. Remember, healing happens in its own time, at its own pace. Be patient with yourself, be gentle with yourself, and trust that the medicine you need is already finding its way to you. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into Tulsi medicine. If this resonated, please like, share, and subscribe because it really does help my channel. And hit the bell for notifications so you'll know when the next video drops. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep listening to what the plants have to teach us. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.